Hi, welcome back. I am Rebecca from the blog and YouTube channel Moon and Magnolia, and today we are going to make a rustic loaf of sourdough bread using 100% home milled flour. Let's go ahead and start making this bread, and I will share with you the benefits and some of the differences of home milled flour over store-bought flour. But first we need to get our flour milled. Over here is my Mock Mill Professional 200, which I am going to use for milling my grains. For this bread today, I am using a hard white winter wheat. And I have adjusted my regular no-knead sourdough bread recipe a little bit just to make it easier to make a single loaf with fresh milled grains. So here I am milling 500 grams of flour. And one of the benefits of milling your own flour like this is that when you mill flour, you retain 100% of the wheat's nutrition. Now, some people do sift out the bran and the germ because it makes the bread feel a little bit softer and more like a traditional bread. But for us and my family, what I want is all of that nutrition. So I am not going to sift out any of the bran and germ. Now that the flour is milled, the first thing we need to do is add water and then let it rest. This is called the autolyse process. So what this does is it hydrates the flour, and this gets a little bit, I don't want to say more technical or complicated, but I think it's a little more important when it comes to fresh milled flour. I often skip this part when I use store-bought flour because it doesn't make too much of a difference. But because fresh milled flour has that hard bran and germ in it, it needs some time to soak up the water. And it also needs a little bit more water than store-bought flour. But to this 500 grams of fresh milled hard white winter wheat, I am adding 350 grams of water. And I am mixing this in thoroughly. So at first I like to use a Danish dough hook just to get it mixed in. And then on the bottom of the bowl, almost every single time, there seems to be some leftover flour. So I like to use my hand just to scoop that up and get it mixed in to make sure everything is getting a chance to hydrate. And then I am simply just wetting a towel, wringing it out until it's damp, and covering that bowl and letting this sit for 30 to 45 minutes. All right, so this has been resting for like 30 to 45 minutes. And now we are going to add the sourdough starter and the salt. So I should add, with my sourdough starter, I don't feed my sourdough starter fresh milled flour just for economic purposes. Maybe it's something I'll do down the road, but right now I'm still feeding this store-bought flour. So maybe technically this isn't 100% whole grain flour. It's like 99.9% whole grain flour, but you can just use your regular old starter for fresh milled flour bread. So this might be a little hard to see, but you can tell on a close-up, hopefully, that the texture of this is a little bit different. It's a little grainy or granular, and that's because the bran and the germ have not been removed. So that means this bread will have a slightly different texture. Often bread made with fresh milled wheat is a little more dense than bread made with store-bought flour, and that's because it has all three parts of the wheat in it. So even the texture of the flour feels a little bit different. But don't let that alarm you. It's totally normal, and you're gonna have a great loaf of bread when you're done here. To this, I'm going to add 100 grams of an active sourdough starter. I got a little bit too much in there, which isn't really that big of a deal. 103, it's totally fine. Don't let the process and the measurements freak you out. I said 100 grams, I got 103, totally fine. And now I'm going to add about 10 grams of coarse kosher salt. One thing to keep in mind is that after that autolyzing period, your flour and water mixture might still feel a little bit dry. And that's because we are still accounting for the water in the starter to hydrate the flour. So it's okay if your flour within reason feels a little dry before adding the starter. We really want to pay attention to that again after we get that starter mixed in. One thing that I want to note here before we mix this is that you will hear people say things like making bread with fresh milled flour is totally different than making bread with store-bought. It is a little bit different, but the quality of the dough should still be the same. So if you are familiar with making bread and making dough, what we are looking for is about the same consistency, texture, stickiness of any dough. So even though, sure, you do have to adjust the hydration and the texture of the flour is a little bit different, your dough should feel like any other dough. Let's mix this. So this part gets a little bit messy sometimes, so just be prepared. This dough does feel a little bit dry, so what I'm going to do is add in a tablespoon of water at a time until it is a little bit stickier. So I'm pretty familiar with making regular no-knead sourdough bread. I make it all the time, and I know from my experience that this is just a little bit too dry. And experience is key. You gotta make a lot of bread to know what dough is supposed to feel like. So I'm gonna add about a tablespoon of water at a time until it is the right stickiness. Okay, so I have added 5 tablespoons of water, and this is super sticky. Now, this is actually what I'm going for in a no-knead sourdough bread, at least the type of bread that my family likes to eat, which is a high hydration dough, because that makes a light and fluffier loaf of bread. So now the next step is we're gonna let this rest again for 30 minutes, and then we will start our stretch and fold process. But, well, this is super sticky. One of the things I wanted to note about making bread with fresh milled flour is that you want to keep it on the most reasonable end of sticky possible. So of course, when you're making bread, you don't want to be so sticky that it's going to turn into a soupy mess, but you do want it to be on the slightly stickier and wetter side because 1, those grains are going to soak up that hydration more, but 2, a high hydration dough makes a fluffier loaf. So we're going to go with this, and then we'll start the stretch and fold soon. Okay, it's been 30 minutes and you can see this is still a pretty sticky dough. So we are going to do stretch and folds, and I recommend, if you have a sticky dough like this, to use a wet hand because that will help prevent the dough from sticking to your hands. The way I do stretch and folds and decide how many I need to do is I stretch and fold the dough until I feel resistance from it. So your first few stretch and folds will be dramatic and stretchy and fun. And as you continue stretching and folding, it will stretch less and less. When you really start to notice some tension and resistance from the dough, that means it's time to let the dough rest and then do a stretch and fold cycle again in 15 or 30 minutes, whatever your cadence is. All we're gonna do for stretch and folds is swoop the hand underneath, pull the dough up. You can see, I'm trying to get it on camera here. It's really stretchy. Fold it over. And then turn the bowl a quarter turn, swoop the hand underneath, stretch it, and you can tell, look, it's already less stretchy. Fold it over. And then you just keep doing that. And so here, look how not stretchy that is. So the first one was super dramatic, but now only after 4, there's a lot of tension and resistance from the dough. So that means I'm gonna let this rest, and then I'll start the stretch and folds again in a few minutes. The way I cycle my cadences is I do stretch and folds every 15 minutes 3 times, and then I do stretch and folds every 30 minutes 3 times. There's a lot of theories about the cadence and how long you should wait in between. Just follow your regular recipe and you should be fine. We stretch and fold sourdough for a number of reasons, and I have a full post about this over on my blog at moonandmagnolia.com. But primarily, stretching and folding first strengthens the gluten strands. So we want that dough to be nice and strong so eventually it can hold air pockets. And that's what makes our bread nice and fluffy and chewy. The stretching part helps the gluten strands develop, and then the folding part creates space for air. Because when that sourdough starter is metabolizing all that wheat, it's releasing carbon dioxide and it needs somewhere to go. So by folding it over, you're creating a little bit of space for that carbon dioxide. The other thing that stretching and folding helps with is equalizing the dough's temperature. So depending on where you have your dough resting, the bottom could be warmer than the top or vice versa. And when you're stretching and folding, because you're swooping underneath the dough and pulling it up and over, you're taking the bottom part of the dough, which could be warmer if it's in a proofing box, or it could be colder because maybe it's on a cold counter, and you're putting it on top. So you're giving the dough a chance to equalize its temperature as you stretch and fold. After the stretch and folds, the dough needs to bulk ferment until it is about doubled and domed on top. So for me, in my proofing box at 78 degrees, that took about 6 hours. And once it is doubled and domed on top, I am turning it out onto a clean counter and preparing to shape it. Of course, shaping puts it into the actual shape that you want it, but the shaping process also creates tension on the surface of the dough. And that ensures your dough doesn't fall flat during the proofing and baking process. So to shape, I am just turning it clockwise as I drag it along the dry counter, and I'm kind of swooping my hand around the edge just to help that tension build. Then I let it rest for 20 minutes, put it in a floured banneton basket, and now I am stitching the dough. This is where I take pieces from opposite ends and pull them across the dough and pinch them closed. Then I am taking the ends of the dough, pulling it over and pinching it into a nice seam. If you don't have a banneton basket, you can definitely use a towel-lined bowl. Just make sure that bowl has high enough sides to hold the shape of your sourdough. And then I am putting this in a plastic bag and sticking it in the fridge for 12 to 15 hours or so. Good morning. So I am finishing up my second cup of coffee, and then we will get this dough in the oven. It has been cold proofing in the fridge for about 19 hours. Usually I like to proof my dough for closer to 12 to 15 hours to develop that nice sour flavor, but it kind of depends on how the timing works out, and it just worked out that 19 hours is what it had to be. You can actually keep sourdough dough in the fridge for up to 3 days before baking. I have a full blog post about that I'll leave in the description box, but let's get this in the oven. Okay, so the dough is out of the fridge. The oven is preheated to 480 degrees with a cast iron Dutch oven inside. So the next step is we just need to score this and start baking. I am turning this out onto a piece of parchment paper so it is now seam side down or face side up. I'm putting flour on top of the dough just for aesthetic purposes. That really makes your scoring stand out. And then I'm using what is called a lame, L-A-M-E, lame, for scoring the dough. So a lame is simply just a razor blade with a handle that makes it a little easier to score dough. The dough is in the oven and it needs to bake for about 25 minutes at 480 degrees with the lid on. So while we're waiting for that first part of baking, let's talk about scoring and a Dutch oven. So scoring is how we prevent the dough from bursting. When you bake that cold dough, it creates steam, which then makes that dough rise again. So it's the third rise of the dough in the oven. That's called oven spring. But when it undergoes that final third rise, there's a bunch of steam that needs to release, and it will always find the weakest part in the dough to release that steam. So rather than just letting the dough burst open just anywhere, scoring gives a weak point for the dough to expand. So in the end, it just creates a much nicer, aesthetically pleasing loaf of bread. Now, the Dutch oven is also a pretty important part of making a really nice loaf of sourdough, because that heavy, tight-fitting lid on a cast iron Dutch oven holds in all of that steam. Steam is what helps that dough have that final rise. It also helps prevent the crust from forming too soon. So you always want to bake your sourdough, if possible, in a cast iron Dutch oven for the first part of the bake with the lid on. And then, as you'll see in a few minutes, we'll take the lid off and really let that crust brown up and get really beautiful and golden. The second part of the bake requires that you drop the temperature. So I dropped mine from 480 degrees Fahrenheit to 450, and then you take off the lid to help that crust get really nice and golden. And then I bake mine for about 12 minutes. I just know that that's about the right time for my oven. But an easy way to tell when your bread is done is to check the internal temperature. So sourdough bread is ready when it reaches around 190 degrees to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Once it comes out of the oven, you do need to let it cool all the way to room temperature before you cut it. And I will say from experience, the absolute hardest part of making sourdough bread is waiting to cut it open, because who doesn't want a nice warm piece of bread? But by waiting until it's cool, it will prevent the inside of your bread from getting gummy. And here is the moment of truth. This bread is beautiful. Check this out. It's so beautiful. Let me see if we can get you a better little view here. It is so beautiful on the inside. Now, one of the things I want you to notice here is that there aren't really big holes in this bread. This is called a tight crumb. So big holes in sourdough is an open crumb, and little holes in sourdough is a tight crumb. We really prefer a tight crumb on our sourdough because it's more versatile and usable. It makes great sandwiches. You can slather butter on it, jelly, whatever you want. Also, when people talk about home milled flour being dense, I think they're using that sort of synonymously with a tight crumb. So just a heads up that you might find that you have a tighter crumb with your sourdough when you use home milled flour. The other thing that I want you to notice, and let me see if I can get a better shot here. So here where I scored it, it looks beautiful, but it didn't get an ear. So an ear, or a leaf, sometimes people call it, is where the bread kind of flips up where you score it. Some people think it's like the thing that you want the most in sourdough, that if you get a beautiful ear, you have arrived on your sourdough journey. I think they're pretty, and aesthetically, I really like them, but I actually don't like it when I have an ear or a leaf on my sourdough because it makes it a little harder to cut. That part always falls off. It makes it a little weird for sandwiches. So I'm really happy that this actually ended up without an ear. The other thing that I want to note about this in terms of taste is that it is much more sour than the sourdough bread I make with store-bought flour. And that is because the more whole grains that are in the flour, the more sour your bread is. I have a full YouTube video and a full blog post about how to make your sourdough less sour. I'll leave links for those in the description box below. But one of the main things you can do is reduce the whole grains. Now, that is a little tricky when you're making 100% whole grain flour. So keep in mind that if you make sourdough bread with 100% whole grain fresh milled flour, it might be a little more sour than what you're used to. One way to reduce the sourness would be to cut back on the cold proofing, because cold proofing does make your bread more sour. So this proof for 19 hours in the fridge. Next time, maybe I'll cut it back to 12 and see how it goes. But all in all, this is a beautiful loaf of sourdough bread. The texture is identical to the sourdough that I make with store-bought bread. The flavor is a little bit more sour, but all in all, I think I'm actually a lot happier with the quality of this bread than the ones I make with store-bought flour. If you want to make sourdough bread and you don't know where to begin, I recommend downloading my free guide to making and using sourdough starter. It is 30+ pages of how to make a sourdough starter, how to make your first loaf of bread, discard recipes, troubleshooting, and more. I will leave a link for that in the description box below. And if you are already on your sourdough path and you know what you're doing, but you want to stay in the know with all the Moon and Magnolia happenings, be sure to sign up for the email list where I will send you all of my recipes, guides, tutorials, and videos right to your inbox. And last but not least, if you want to save this video and these instructions, a really easy way to do that is to pin this video to your Pinterest board. Just hit the share button, select your board, and you can save it there. Thanks so much for stopping by today, and I will see you again next time. That is so good.